Bicara Supply Chain, highlighting and showcasing solutions for the most complex challenges facing the industry in 21st century by our team of subject matter experts and mentors. Broadcasting every week, all year round, we will present the most up-to-date series of podcasts and webinars.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bicara Supply Chain. This is Nurhadi, your host, and I'm speaking now with Canda Rozier. She is a former Chief Procurement Officer at the multiple global companies and currently is a president of Collabra Consulting, which focus on the sourcing and procurement project. So thanks for coming and welcome to Bicara Supply Chain, Canda.
Thanks so much, Nurhadi. I'm glad to be talking with you today.
Mm-hmm. So today's topic is the importance of negotiation skills for a procurement professional. But before that, can you please brief a bit about yourself, your professional background, and what do you do at the Collabra Consulting?
Okay, thanks. So as you mentioned, I'm a former Chief Procurement Officer at multiple global companies. I most recently was the head of procurement at NTT Security. I've been in procurement for over 30 years, and most of that focused with international companies, primarily in all categories of indirect procurement. I'm currently, as you mentioned, the president of Collabra Consulting, which is a firm that's focused on strategic sourcing and procurement projects and transformation. Mm-hmm. I'm very, very happy to be talking with you about negotiation, because it's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, interesting. So talking about the negotiation and procurement, so I would like to know from you a fundamental understanding of the negotiation itself. So can you please tell us what are negotiation process in a procurement and why does it play a critical role in today's business?
Well, I think that most people in procurement would be quick to say, oh yes, negotiation is part of the job, because they think about the negotiation that they do with suppliers, big contracts, that sort of thing. But I believe that, of course, that's a very key way that procurement uses negotiation. But I think that effective and successful procurement professionals also do a lot of other negotiation in their job. And that often starts with the negotiations that you do internally with your internal stakeholders. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people don't think perhaps about those as being negotiations. But my experience is they often are, because procurement is very much in the role of leading collaboration and getting people to consensus. And that starts with the internal business with your stakeholders. And that would be the person, the department that has the requirement. Maybe it's IT, maybe it's marketing, and also then your internal legal teams that are supporting you, your finance teams, perhaps your governance or internal audit groups. And procurement needs to be in a position to be able to effectively develop consensus with all of those teams. And that has to occur typically before you start to negotiate with your supplier. So I think procurement it needs to see that negotiation and negotiation skills form a very, very key part of almost all the interactions that procurement have all along the life cycle of sourcing.
Awesome. And then what are key success factors for an effective procurement negotiations, Canda?
Well, I think, Nurhadi, that one of the keys to success is planning. I think planning Yes. I think a lot of people approach a negotiation and they think, and I find this not only, professionally, but I think in our personal lives, people take the same approach. They think, oh, I'm a good negotiator. And so they just charge into the negotiation session. Mm-hmm. And they haven't planned. They haven't really put together a strategy and thought about how are they going to approach it. And so I think one of the very most important keys to success is planning for the negotiation. And in that planning, one of I think there are several key things you need to think about. One is what is it that and remember my view is when I say I don't mean me, the person doing the negotiation, but rather my company or the group that I'm negotiating on behalf of. What equals success? What will success look like? What are the goals of this negotiation that I'm undertaking? And what are the prioritization of those goals? And I think that this goes back to my comment about that you have to sometimes be negotiating with your own internal stakeholders, because sometimes the internal business owner may not have really thought about if there are 5 things they want to achieve in the negotiation, which are the most important, because they may not get them all. Yeah. So I think this is part of that planning, is determining what do you want to achieve, what is the optimum outcome, what are alternative outcomes, what happens if you can't get everything you want. So I think that's a first step of planning. Then I think another part of that planning is really trying to understand the other side, if you will. Mm-hmm. And in the case of procurement, it's very often, and most typically would be the supplier. So what is it that they want? And I think people often sort of say, well, of course they just want to sign the deal. And maybe at a high level, that's correct. But I think we'll dig a little bit deeper and they'll say, what's motivating the other side? Mm-hmm. Is it the salesperson the company has a quarter end or a fiscal year end coming up, and the salesperson has a quota that they're trying to get done in a certain timeline? Mm-hmm. Is it that the company, the vendor perhaps has launched a new product line, and that this sale will help them gain traction in a new market area? So mm-hmm. I think that part of the planning is understanding what some of the motivating points for the other side, for the supplier, would be. Once you've done that planning, then I think you also have to, in terms of keys to success, you really have to focus on communication. Yeah. In more and more I think in today's world, perhaps more than ever with COVID, I think people are realizing and companies are realizing that a win-win outcome really has to be the way, that companies can't just demand things anymore. And so how you communicate to achieve a mutually acceptable outcome to a negotiation is another really key factor for success.
Yeah. Awesome. Other thing I would like to ask is, what advice can you offer to the procurement professional to improve their negotiation skill?
That's a great question. And, I think I've got a couple answers for that, Norhadi, but my first one would be practice. In other words, do it. The best way to get good at negotiating is to negotiate. Mm-hmm. And so, often people say, well, gosh, but what if I'm not very expert at it? I might fail. And my response to that would be, well, you probably won't fail. You may not succeed as well as you might have wanted to. But my experience is the only way you get better is by doing it.
Yeah.
And by trying to watch and learn from people that you're negotiating both with and the people you're negotiating against. And I think the other thing is that people, the advice I would have is to realize that we all negotiate in all kinds of ways, in our professional life and in our personal lives. And the kinds of skills, both communication skills and the strategies that you use, and that you need in a procurement negotiation can be practiced all throughout your other parts of your life, whether it's with your family or your friends or maybe organizations that you belong to. We all negotiate almost every day, and a lot of people don't even think about it. And so it's a great way to just work on your skills and your communication approaches and styles.
Yeah, awesome. Interesting. So before we close our conversation, do you have any final thoughts or key takeaway from today's topic, Canda?
What I would say is that a lot of people, I think, can be perhaps a little nervous about going into negotiations, particularly people that may be early in their careers or haven't done a lot of negotiating. And what I would want to leave people with is don't be nervous, don't be uneasy about negotiating. Very often, the person that you are negotiating against, the other party to the negotiation, may be as uneasy as you are. And if you approach negotiations in a structured way, and if you know that your ultimate goal is to get a good outcome for you, for your company, and that the other side of the negotiation is probably likewise trying to get a good outcome, that lets you go in with a positive view that says, there's a way to conclude this negotiation successfully with a win-win. And if you go into it with that approach, you're often very likely going to be successful, which is the goal of the negotiation.
Yeah. Awesome. So thanks again for coming, Canda. Have a great day ahead, and I look forward to speaking with you at another time.
Thanks so much for having me, Nurhadi, and all the best.
At Bicara Supply Chain, we are committed to driving global perspective to embrace technological adaptation in improving process efficiencies. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share Bicara Supply Chain. And stay tuned for the latest updates. To learn more, visit our website www.bicarasupplychain.com. Thank you for listening to us. We look forward to seeing you at our next episode.